Welcome to Deep Dive with Dr. D. The entire goal of this podcast is to help you see that you have it within you to do amazing things. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show, or welcome back to the show, whether you are someone who's a regular listener to the podcast, or maybe you've just jumped in and this is your first opportunity to give a listen. Welcome. I appreciate the people that listen in, and I hope my goal of doing this and the work that I get to do in my life as a whole is all about helping people see that they have it within them to do amazing things. And so that's what this podcast is for. Over the last several episodes now, I have been telling the story of my life. I like to say I've lived a pretty full life in a lot of ways. I've been on both sides of the law. I've been system involved, I say, involved with the criminal justice system, with treatment systems, with mental health care systems as a formerly incarcerated person, a person who used to have the moniker convicted felon and have long walked away from that. I was able to go back to the courts in 2010 and have that vacated from my record. This month, it's fitting that I've been sharing the journey of my life in recovery in March, because March is my anniversary month. On the 25th of this month, I will enjoy 18 years of recovery. I will talk today in this episode, as I continue telling the story of my life, I will venture into when my previous length of abstinence was 10 and a half years. My previous recovery date was 2/21 of 96, and I would keep that until the fall of 2006, where I would take what I call a little break from abstinence and recovery, and then find my way back to recovery. Fortunate for me, alive, fairly unscathed, and so I always listen to the last couple 3 minutes of the previous podcast to kind of catch myself up on what part of my life I was talking about. And if you want to go back and listen, you can. If not, I'll just in a short snippet talk about it. I had moved to Ellensburg with what would be my third wife. We got married actually when we moved over here. We were just engaged. I think we got married after we'd been together for like 5-6 years. And I tell this in that last episode. Certainly there was part of me, I don't think anyone gets married thinking, oh, one day I'm going to get divorced, or that wasn't the case with me. Every one of my marriages, I've wanted them to work. What I didn't want to do is follow in my mother's footsteps, who we're not sure how many times she was married. But with that said, that third marriage for me was, just in hopes that things would change. Our relationship to that point had a lot of struggles and issues, but we do get married in Ellensburg. So in the last one, I talk about that move to Ellensburg. The first couple 3 years, I had been with Fred Meyer when I moved over, and then I leave Fred Meyer. I end up tapping into my entrepreneurial spirit, and I start a couple businesses. I buy a business, the Hungry Hippo Sub Shop. I'm actually going to read a journal entry from this period of time, and it's pretty close to, we may get to it today, depending on how much I talk about the summer running up to when I do return to use in that late summer, fall of 2006. Again, having been in recovery for over 10 and a half years. And literally for me, right up until I make that decision to return to use, which was with drinking. I remember we drove up in the hills. I had started hanging out with a guy riding motorcycles, and we drove up into the hills, and there was a party up in the hills. And I remember I returned to use in that, it was, late summer. But running almost right up to it, I was seeing a counselor. I was having massive massive issues with my mental health, anxiety, depression, worry. My marriage, the Stephanie and I's marriage, was almost over. It was like just putting a Band-Aid on this massive gushing wound, when you really need surgery or to just cut it off. Like, that's what our marriage was. So there was massive anxiety with that. I had bought the little sub shop in downtown Ellensburg. And again, this is 05, 06, when the street that I bought the Hungry Hippo on was a pretty quiet street. Like, Main Street was doing okay. Ruby was doing, or Pearl was doing okay, but Pine, there wasn't a lot going on. And again, Ellensburg's small town, but I was really chasing this dream. I want to talk about this here. I was chasing money, and my one of the things I did when I returned to recovery after that return to use in 06, 07 is I really changed actually my whole view on recovery and what it should look like and what I wanted it to be. But one key area for me too was changing my relationship with money. I had big hopes and dreams for the Hungry Hippo. It was a cool little place. People still talk about it from time to time. And I did have a short amount of success, but man, I bought it on a shoestring budget, about the worst thing you can do for a business. It was an existing business and it was already struggling, but I was just chasing. I was like, oh man, I gotta get to, and I think some of that can be good, but I just have to say for myself, my view on money was much different in that period of my life running up to when I returned to use. So there was a lot of financial stress. I could have just said that. I had a lot of financial. I bought it on a shoestring budget. And so literally it was, payroll to payroll, getting payroll paid and borrowing money, and it was not good. But I was going to meetings. I was talking to people. I was really doing my best to keep it together, but I remember I'm going to read you a couple journal entries. I remember the weight that I carried pretty regularly. In fact, I just remembered, we have a yearly fair. It's the Kittitas County Fair. And, I wanted to get in the fair because that's a great place. You can make money. And I remember that it was so stressful. And I'm thinking of someone I ended up befriending at that fair. He's a local guy, and I feel terrible that I can't remember his name. This happens for me. Don't smoke pot, kids, because then you don't remember shit. That's my joke about that. But I can see his face, and I remember the time we spent at the fairgrounds when I was just completely stressed out. In a lot of ways, he helped keep me alive, just listening to me and talking to me. So I want to read a couple journal entries. I like to do this. If you've been following along, I highly recommend journaling for people in early recovery, for people in recovery, for people in life. It's a really therapeutic thing to do that I've done since the mid-90s. And now that I have this literal, pages and pages of history of my life, it's a really good reflection tool. And it's actually my journaling that helped me to recognize patterns that I had developed in relationships. I don't know if I've said this in any of the episodes, but if you've been following along, I've had long-term relationships with two Stephanies in my life, right? I call her Stephanie number 1 and Stephanie number 2, right? And I have journal entries in a journal that has journal entries over the period of time with both Stephanies. And it was through reading previous journal entries that I recognized that I could no longer keep pointing the finger at the woman, because it was me in all of this. But I have journal entries on the two different Stephanies, right? The issues I was having with them and the things that I felt that they should be doing to blah, 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 right? Pointing the finger. But it was the same thing, just two relationships apart, just the same name. And I was able to recognize, David, you got to look at you. you're the common denominator, right? So interesting. So I highly encourage journaling as a tool to help you. I highly encourage therapy, counseling, having a strong circle of influence to support you in your life. So here we go. So we're gonna continue on this journey talking about the story of my life. And the journal entries I'm gonna read are from 2006. This is the summer of 2006. I had bought the Hungry Hippo. I was out on my own basically. I had a contract delivering packages. I was doing computer work. I had a computer business, Douglas Consulting. And I was just trying to, piece it all together to pay the bills and hope for a promising future. And so here's June 29th of 2006. Repeated patterns are very apparent in this journal. What I want, that is a good question for me to ponder. I'm at the end of another relationship where I end up at wit's end with a woman. Or is it I'm really at wit's end with myself? I think the latter is true. Discover who David is when he is not focused on a woman, and I think my frustration level will lessen greatly. That was signed by me. So that's June, and me and Stephanie, it was a lot of back and forth. We would break up on a pretty regular basis. And the next journal entry is just about a month later on July 13th of that same year. Life is a struggle right now. There is hope, but I'm struggling with my work, with my involvement with women, with my level of overall satisfaction with my life. I'm once again probing into my past and how it has still affected me today, mostly in regards to my view on women and how I am in a relationship. Right now, I'm feeling like the hippo was a big mistake. Right now, the financial burden is overwhelming. I'm not sure how much longer I can do this. I feel like if I lose the hippo, then I will lose everything else. My marriage is over, so what is next? The hippo? Then what? It is hard to have the hope that keeps me going each day. I like the music that is playing on the TV right now. It feels relaxing to me. I love Cody. I love Tyler. I somewhat love myself. I have hope that all of this will pass with time. That down the road I will see the benefits of what I'm going through on a daily basis right now. Good night. At this period, I had gotten my own place. This was a first. This is when I knew that me and Stephanie were over. If you follow along, we end up trying two more times after this, but I had actually gotten my own place. It's a little duplex. We actually live where I live now. It's not far from where that little duplex still is. I had rented a duplex. I had the Hungry Hippo. I had my dog Cody. Cody. He was a good boy. I called him the gentle giant. He was a Rottweiler Malamute and just the gentlest soul of a dog ever. And this journal entry is not long before, he had started developing a limp in his front leg. Previous to this, he had issues with his rear legs and had actually had surgery, and it had helped him a lot because his knees were at a weird angle. Alas. Oh, there it is, Megan. Alas, I say it. But he started developing a limp in his front leg. So I take him to the vet, and they look at it, and and he was 6.5, 7. He wasn't that old. And they look at it, and I remember, because the fair was happening. Dr. Fuller, a local vet, he came and sought me out at the fair. Now, keep in mind what I've talked about. My stress level, my mental health was just managing on a daily basis right now. Financial burden of the business, mental stress of the marriage failing. I have my son in my life, and I actually have a journal entry where we still had a decent relationship, but that was starting to shift because he was getting into his teenage years, and his desire to kind of be with his dad was tough. I think it was okay. And it was just heavy. And Dr. Fuller sought me out at the fair because that just happened to be where I was. And you never forget certain moments in time. And he said, Cody has a nerve tumor and it's cancerous and he doesn't have long to live. And I just, oh man. I think of Theo and Melissa. I've known them forever since I very first moved to Ellensburg. I was basically, after that point, contemplating suicide, giving up in a lot of ways. I was at that duplex. Friends would come over and bang on the windows, and just try to pull me out of bed because I was done. I remember it's Katrina, who we'll get to, my wife now, Katrina. She was a friend at the time. We were friends for years before we even contemplating dating. Her and another friend. I remember them coming over and forcing me to get out of bed and taking me on a hike. I remember Theo and Melissa and other people coming just to try to rally me. And it was just after the news with Cody, knowing that I was going to lose my dog. When I read that journal entry about I feel like my life is going to end, I hadn't thought about that in a while. That's where I was with things, that I was losing the marriage with Stephanie. The Hungry Hippo, people think, I don't know what people think, but I think they think because I returned to use, that's why the Hungry Hippo failed. That's part of it for sure, but long before I returned to use, it was a massive financial burden. Month to month. I had that weight. My future was uncertain. And then now my dog's going to die. And it was tough. I was seeing a counselor. I actually just saw her. She's retired now and we embraced and she helped me so much. She did everything she could to help me. I was working with my physician, on medication, and I remember trying some medication, and this is normal when you try medication for anxiety and depression. They have side effects, and as ironic as it is, one of the side effects when you first start on some medication is it can make you suicidal. It's like, great. That happened for me. I tried, it was Lexapro. Lexapro was still pretty new on the market, and I don't blame the drug necessarily, but I was already in a mental health crisis. But it took me over, and it was Melissa, I think, who drove me down to, used to be called Memorial Hospital. I don't know what it's called now. And I spent a few days in the mental health facility to just try to regroup and reboot. And I came back, tried kind of managing my life, and things were just spiraling. For me, in my view, my life was just spiraling downhill. I had to put Cody down. That was a very, very difficult day. I'm a dog guy. And so here, the business was failing. My wife is gone. The divorce, as I know, is coming. And now my dog's gone. I think I'm going to go backwards, but I want to read what would happen. I would return to use. Me and Stephanie, I'm not saying I'm going to be in the future. So let me read August 12th of 2006. I'm pretty sure this is right before I put Cody down. The last month has gone by, and I hope I have been able to stay absent from negative behaviors that cause me emotional pain. I'm living alone, and it isn't too bad. There are parts of it I like a lot, and parts of it I don't like. Tyler has been here for a couple weeks, and overall has been very good. Me and Stephanie are still separated, and I'm not sure where that is going to be in the future. I will continue to work on me, and my life will be good no matter what happens between me and Stephanie. Yeah, so this was pre-Cody having to put down, because the fair is Labor Day weekend, so it would be a few weeks later that I would put Cody down, and it was a mess. I would end up in the mental health facility for a few days, and then I would come back. And here's April 6th of 2007. So what is that, 8 months later? Is that correct? Yep. 8 months later. What is life? I've been sober for 12 days after a 6-month relapse. Definitely better being sober. I'm observing and evaluating my behavior and my relationships with women. Me and Stephanie are friends now, and I value that very much. I spent a good deal of my relapse with Sarah, and feelings came out of that. We are currently not communicating at all, and that causes feelings of anger and sadness. Being sober is much better. My relationship with my son has changed dramatically for the better. I feel a shift in my thinking in regards to all my relationships with people. I'm working on myself first, and everyone else will come after that. It is good to be sober. So let's talk about it. So I said that I returned to use, and I remember it had to have been mid-September-ish of 06. Again, I'd been sober for 10 and a half years to that point. And seriously, right up until the point that I did, I was staying engaged. As I was going to meetings, I was talking to people. Theo was he did everything he could because I was being really clear with him. In fact, I think he's the one I said, yeah, I think I'm going to drink. And he's like, oh man, probably not a good idea. And I did. So I would return to drinking, and that was the first thing I returned to use with was alcohol. Within a very short period of time in little old Ellensburg, I was getting 86 from damn near every bar. The drinking went from 0 to 60 almost overnight. And one of the first people that I sought out was my best friend, Sarah. I had met Sarah previously when we were both in recovery. She had started her journey in recovery. And then she returned to use. And I still talk to her, but just not as much. And then, as you can tell, I had so much going on with my own mental health stuff. And she was, doing whatever she was doing. She's one of the first people I remember I went over. She says, I left my business card at her house because I had returned to drinking. So I wanted to, let's drink together. And we did. And for me, how'd this play out? Within a month, again, after being sober for 10 and a half years, within a month, I started drinking like I had never stopped. I, of course, started smoking pot again. I started smoking cigarettes again. And then it was like, I want cocaine. Sarah helped me find some connections for cocaine. She wasn't doing it herself at the time. She was just drinking. But then we started using everything together. Within a short period of time, just doing lines of cocaine wasn't enough. And so I started turning it into crack cocaine. And then it was just on. As I said before, what do I have going on in my life? I still own the Hungry Hippo. It's still open. I'm still doing computer work. I'm still doing the package delivery. I had someone working for me doing that. But I'm going to be honest, when I returned to use, it was it was a relief. Like all that stress and worry, it was gone. Why? Well, I was drunk and I was high all the time. So it was great. But yeah, I very, very quickly, within a month, probably by the end of September, mid-October, I was back at it like I had never stopped. I still had a healthy fear of methamphetamines, of meth. I know that might sound crazy. Well, you're smoking crack. Why not smoke meth? Because of all the stuff I had been through with meth, I was still like, I stayed. I think I did a little bit of meth during this time, but not a ton. I started hanging out with a couple. They did a lot of meth. Oof. And I was drinking, smoking pot, smoking crack, tiny bit of meth, and just, it was on. It was on. Me and Sarah, Sarah worked through all of this, and I kind of worked. I mean, I owned the Hungry Hippo. I had people working there, and it was on a downhill slide as it was, and then it was just going even quicker. But it kind of initially gave me a new zest for life. Like, I felt like, okay, I can make this all work and it's going to be great. And the stress of, whether me and Stephanie were going to get back together again dissipated. And, so, this is kind of what happens when you start doing drugs and alcohol. And I had that 10.5-year hiatus. So it was kind of new again. So initially it felt like, yeah, this is great. Well, that didn't last long, because just what happened with everyone with heavy drugs and heavy alcohol use is all your focus starts going toward that. All your money starts going toward that. And so I was no exception. So me and Sarah, it was on. It was like this just 24-hour cycle of just running and gunning. And yeah, a lot of crazy. My son, so Tyler and I, our relationship to that point, was fairly rocky. He had started, I'm pretty sure he was smoking pot and drinking and doing whatever he was doing already. I don't know. I don't remember. I know he's told me if he was doing heavy drugs yet. But I think I remember calling Cindy when I was drunk, his mom, and saying, hey, I'm drinking again. And I'm sure she was like, oh my God. Everyone was like, I was the sober guy. I had been sober for 10 plus years. And, I think some people maybe weren't surprised based on everything that was going on. But Cindy was just surprised. Well, so I think the first thing I did with Tyler was smoke pot. I got high with my son. He's 16 at the time. This is 06. Yeah, he was 16. And then Tyler, me, and Sarah started hanging out, and it all came into play. I'm not proud of this. I still feel guilt and remorse for this, but I did I did it all. We all did it together. And my entire focus for that winter, was just back to what it was in the mid 90s. The focus was getting high and avoiding the stuff that I was faced with prior to that. So it would pretty quickly too start, like, I knew, for anyone who's returned to use or relapse, whatever you want to call it, I knew, like, almost immediately, like, yeah, this isn't going to go well. Right. And I better stop, or it's going to get like it was before. It's going to get worse. But that took some time. Once I started smoking crack again, that's what we were doing primarily. We had an express lane from Ellensburg to Yakima. Me and Sarah, the main core. Tyler was with us a bit. I remember, so I had the Hungry Hippo going, and I would open the Hungry Hippo and work the lunch. Sarah was working at the espresso stand. She's actually still working there. Her boss, Jody, is just absolutely an amazing human. She actually helped Sarah a lot get back into a life of recovery. And that'll come down the road. But she worked through the whole thing, and she was off by noon. So usually that's, we would both do what we needed to do. And then boom, the rest of the day was focused on going to Yakima to get more drugs, and then just being high in my little duplex. Or Sarah had a house at the time. We would go to her house. And this is winter time. It was chaos. We were hanging out with another couple, Robert and, oh geez, I can't think of her name. I just lost it. They were mainly doing a lot of meth, and Robert had a lot of active stuff going on. He had been in active use for a long time, but he had been trying to get in recovery. So that's where I had met him initially, but he had returned to use. It was crazy. It was crazy times. I can laugh about it now, but looking back, I'm fortunate I'm alive. I'm fortunate I didn't end up in jail. I'm fortunate Sarah's alive, Tyler's alive. A lot of a lot of chaos, a lot of crazy. I do want to say this about me and Tyler. It softened our relationship, and some people like that's crazy to think, but I was a fun dad. I wasn't really strict and staunchy and recovery dad. I was dad in active use, and he was in active use with me, and we had fun. We did have fun. We have great stories to tell, for sure, but also. Like I said, I could see also even through, being high and doing all that, like, this is not good, not good at all. It would be, November, late November, cause I think it was Thanksgiving. Sarah was living in a house that she was renting from her parents. I'm pretty sure it was around Thanksgiving that people started figuring it out, right? Like they could see like this shit was going on. And I think it was around Thanksgiving where we tried our first, like, okay, we got to stop this. It was also Thanksgiving. I think Sarah got her dog Harper. But that wouldn't be it. We'd keep going. But that would be kind of the start of, oh yeah, okay, we gotta slow down. We can't do this much. And knowing that I'm using with my son, it's not going good. Whew, it was crazy. It was a lot. January, kind of the same thing. February would be where, we'd really start. We would take breaks from each other, me and Sarah, because, this is common in active use. You have your person that you use with. And so if you're trying to get in recovery, you got to separate yourself from that person. She stayed at Jody's for a little while. Did she go to her parents? I don't remember. I know her parents kicked her out of the house. And I think that's when she went to Jody's. And it would be in March that it would really start slowing down. The fun was gone. We had some fun. We had a lot of crazy times, but the money was low. The money was gone. I closed the Hungry Hippo. I'm pretty sure February 1st. I'm almost certain. Cause it was, like I said, it was already struggling. Well, it was struggling anymore. So then I closed it. Income was gone. And it was in March that would begin the end of use and just trying to quit. I was going back to meetings. I was talking to friends in recovery. You do that. I do that thing of, okay, I made it a couple days. I can do this. And then boom, I'd use again. Sarah, we just had to have a break from each other. We had to just take a full break from each other. I think that we didn't see or talk to each other at least for a couple weeks or month until we really got back onto a road of recovery. And so that was my hiatus from recovery. And I'm looking in here to see if I have a journal entry after the last one I read where I'm back in recovery, because I would really change my views on living a life in recovery. Yeah, so August of 2007. So now I've been sober again for, March, April, May, June, July, August, 5 months. The good news is I'm clean and sober, and I'm doing some good work on my core issues. It's not easy. It's painful at times, but I'm willing today to look at myself in order to have more peace in my life. I'm grateful for God putting me on a current path of healing. So that's where it was. I think I'm going to close this one up with a message of hope. I always say this, everyone's path is individual. Whatever works for you, please do that. Whether you've been in recovery for the duration, whether you've been in recovery and you've returned to use like me, or you've returned to use many times, you can get back to recovery. And what I say, and I'll talk about this in the next episode, is how I changed some of my views on recovery, is everyone's path is unique to them. I want you to do what's going to work for you. Love to all. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to Deep Dive with Dr. D. You can follow me on my other social media channels by clicking the link in the description.